Legal presents The Realty Debate with Manisha Natarajan, powered by Reliance Home Finance.
Welcome to The Realty Debate on NDTV Prime. Today we'll be tackling two big topics. First, we'll begin with the financing aspect of affordable homes in India. Where is the money coming to make and buy affordable homes in India? Second, RERA has been notified. The question we will debate today: should harassed buyers who are stuck with delayed projects wait for a regulator to come into place, or are they better off approaching consumer courts right away? Let's get on with the debate on affordable housing. Well, in the past few weeks, we've chopped and dissected the policy framework and land issues around affordable housing. Today, in the third of our continuing series, we tackle another critical ingredient of making affordable housing or housing for all possible in India, and that's financing. What are the money challenges developers of affordable housing face? And what about the buyers themselves? The buyer, can he buy these homes? And can he get loans to finance this purchase? Well, it's easy to say that there are homes, or if there are homes available for 10 lakhs or under, there should be enough and more takers. We find that that's really not so. There are currently around 25 lakh empty affordable homes across the country. So to fit in the pieces of this puzzle, I'm joined by Rajesh Krishnan, CEO of Brick Eagle. Also with me here, Madhusudan Menon, Chairman, Micro Housing Finance Corporation. In the Delhi studio, Sriram Kalyanaraman, Chairman, National Housing Bank. And also for a developer perspective, Geetambar Anand, CMD ATS Infrastructure and President CREDAI. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining me. Before I come to you, let me just quickly tell you or tell our viewers what is the buyer's puzzle today. First of all, some of the financing problems faced by LIG EWS, that's low income group and economically weaker segment home buyers, is access to capital at low interest rates. That seems to be still a challenge. Most housing finance companies' rate of interest are high, and they do not operate in far-flung areas. Banks also stay away from lending due to lack of proper valid documents in this group. And microfinance institutions, which is MFIs, are considered the best alternatives to finance LIG EWS homes, but they perhaps don't look at longer period of housing loans. I mean, that's a collateral which carries on for 15 to 20 years. Problems faced by developers: lack of affordable land. Land is very pricey. Various forms of taxes and levies like VAT, service tax, stamp duty constitutes 30 to 35%. The developers' borrowing costs are also high, ranging from 18 to 25%. And nationalized banks are still reluctant to lend because it's considered very, very high. I'm going to go, I have a lot of points on what the government has done recently and what NHB has done, but let's open the floor for the discussion. Mr. Kalyanaraman, what do you think is the big problem today, or do you think that with subsequent policy measures, the problem has become smaller?
Okay. Let me first put it this way. My question is financing a problem? If I look at the statistics, and this has just come out for December, of the new number of units booked, because traditionally what was happening is we compare the below 10 lakhs account based on the value and say this is only 10% of the value of loans done. I've just changed that a little bit because values have no meaning here. And if we say number of loans disbursed by the banks below 10 lakhs, so I'm assuming with a 85% LTV, the ticket size will be 12 or 13 lakhs. 42% of the new loans which is booked in the current year up to December financial year has gone to the below 10 lakhs account. Right?
You mean incremental loan portfolio, Mr. Kalyanaraman?
42%, yeah. This is the statistics.
Is below 10 lakhs?
Below 10 lakhs.
Wow, okay.
Okay. So there is no, as the people say, no, it's not available. It's not entirely true. Can we do it better? Yes, we can do better. Okay. Is there a problem of the low income segments getting a loan? I would say yes, it is. Because it ranges on two things. One, while everybody says the industry is at 1.5% delinquency, let's go and lend. Let's do a data cut and let's take it below 5 lakhs. It moves to something like 3%. And I'm talking about 90 days. 90 days past due. Now, but 3%, on an industry which is running at a margin of barely 2% or 2.2%, people tend to lose their profit on that loan account, the financial institutions.
All right, fair enough.
To the challenges of underwriting and irregular income is not quite easy. But the financial institutions are taking it and moving forward. Both banks and some of the new HFCs we have licensed are solely concentrating on this segment.
You're saying we could do better, but we've done a lot. We've come a long way. Rajesh Krishnan, would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would say so. I don't think the bottleneck today is finding home loans for customers. The bottleneck really is finding supply. See, demand was never the problem. It is supply. So, I mean, look, just to put things in perspective, I'm told India needs about $2 trillion of funding to address housing for all. But out of this, about 70% of the money would come from housing finance, which seems like a big amount, but today that's not the bottleneck. About 20% of this money, that's about $400 billion, would come from bank loans. And today, by the way, most banks are not lending to affordable housing sector. That is the fact. Especially the local developers who are doing affordable housing across the country, they struggle to get bank loans. But then the bottom 10% of money is really equity, which is about $200 billion. And there's no institutional investor out there who is funding local developers who are doing affordable housing. This is the money that is required for land acquisition, for the initial working capital to launch a project. So while housing finance is clearly the largest piece of the pie, I'm saying the bottleneck is not there today. The bottleneck is really finding the first slug of equity to launch for developers to get projects started, and then backing them with bank loans, which are required to take projects off the ground.
Wow. Let me recap what you've said. You're saying out of the $2 trillion of funding required, 70% will come from housing finance, 20% loan from banks. Banks are reluctant. I think the 70% piece is in place, but 20% from banks, they're reluctant. And 10% equity, which needs to come in as the first risk capital, is the one which is the most reluctant. Is that so?
I'm not saying we have all the housing finance money today. All I'm saying is that is not the bottleneck today.
That's not a bottleneck today.
Once we get supply off the ground, we will need to solve for a larger quantum of housing finance. But today, that is not the bottleneck.
All right, fair enough. So I think you're aligned to what Mr. Kalyan Raman is also saying. Madhusudan Menon, I remember every time we do this discussion on affordable finance, affordable housing, you do say that finance is a bottleneck. So are you seeing that change over the last 3 years? You've been part of the discussions on the property show on affordable housing. Do you think that bottlenecks are getting reduced? I mean, we're looking for solutions here.
Yeah, I really think a lot has changed in the last 3 to 5 years, and especially in the last 1 year, a lot has changed in terms of the focus and also in terms of the priority that the government policy is giving towards the sector. So I think overall, I'm a lot more optimistic today than I used to be, let's say three years ago. Having said that, the challenge is immense. I mean, Rajesh just talked about the size of the puzzle, which is like $2 trillion. Right. I mean, whichever way you slice this pie, it's a rather large amount, whether it's equity piece or the loan piece. The critical thing is getting it started and moving on, in the sense that we need to get projects moving faster. I think a lot of capital is wasted in terms of the time it takes to get a project on the ground, get it approved and get it to take off. I mean, projects are stuck for 5 to 6 years. That is like 30 to 60%, 30% of the cost to the customer. That's one part. The other part is the taxes that go into the cost of the unit itself. Another 30-35%. So if you take out 30% of the cost in terms of the delays in approval and delays in construction, and take out another 30-35% in the cumulative taxes that go into the end cost of an apartment, then you're talking about a pie which is like from 2 trillion, it's already down to $600 billion. And then you take into account what is the normal investment that is taking place in housing on an annual basis, then the gap is not really that big that we cannot fix it at all. So like I said, I'm really optimistic about, and there's a lot more focus from the policymakers, from the regulators, and from more players who are increasingly comfortable with the credit risk now of the end customer.
Fair enough.
Nice to get somebody says regulators supporting.
Yeah, regulators supporting. In fact, the government has also taken very strong steps. Before I go to Mr. Gitambar Anand, let me just put in perspective for our viewers what has come about from the government's end. Exempted service tax on all housing projects in under Housing for All scheme, and low cost houses up to a carpet area of 60 square meters under any housing scheme of the center or state government, with effect from March 1st, 2016. 100% of deduction for profits to an undertaking from a housing project for flats up to 30 square meters in 4 metros and 60 square meters in other cities. The deduction will be applicable on projects approved during June 2016 to March 2019 and completed within 3 years. So this is the big one, and in the earlier budget, the government also allocated 4,000 crore to National Housing Bank to provide cheaper credit facilities to people belonging to LIG and EWS, and NHB has also gone ahead and implemented this. Gitambar Anand, I mean, I think Madhusudan has just said exactly summed up the scenario. So financing will come if you don't have moving goalposts, if you know that approvals will come. But you've been lobbying for it for the longest time with government. Do you believe that on the policy front, both on taxes which are loaded onto affordable houses and approvals, that there's a lot to be done on that front?
Yes, see, on the approval side, I'll say the government has come up to give them their due and credit for what they're doing. They've come up with a model building bylaw notification, which will actually make the approval process much simpler. But this is, you see, the approval process is a state subject. So now the government has given direction to the states to cut down this whole thing to a 30-day window, where environment clearance won't be required for projects up to 15 lakhs or 16 lakh square feet. Now, when do the states adopt it is another story. So we have to push at each state level. Having said that, you see this new policy which we were just talking about for 30 square meters and 60 square meters. What we need to understand, Manisha, is what is the actual number of homes that is required. So there are two parts to this entire story. One is the affordable homes required in the urban areas, which we all know has been documented at about 18.7 odd million units. And there are these homes required in the semi-urban areas, which are not exactly rural areas, but which are actually on the outskirts of these urban areas. Like in the north, we know there are so many smaller towns where homes are required. And this number, they say, is close to 40 million units. Now, with the new Income Tax Act, which they brought in this budget, you know, we really applaud the entire effort, but there is something in the fine print which will actually again prevent the private sector from doing housing in this space, because the tax exemption will still not be available. Because this 30 square meter, of course, we have always been telling the government is, I'll tell you why, because the window they've given for completion is a 3-year period. So you have to complete the project in a time frame of 3 years to avail this benefit. So this is, of course, a challenge. And considering that, you know, there are unforeseen, unexpected surprises sprung on us all the time, be it the NGT, be it, you know, land issues. So there are so many unforeseen things which actually stall a project, or there can be a stay on the project. So this 3-year window to complete a project of this magnitude, you know, with higher FARs in the urban areas will be a challenge. So that, of course, will prevent us from availing this 100% exemption. Secondly, a 30 square meter unit, we feel, you know, we have to go vertical for a 30 square meter to avail, to actually exploit the entire FSI. So we'll actually be building vertical slums, and the takers for these units, 30 square meters, you know, they have to be well aware of the common area maintenance charges, how to run the lifts, how to have, you know, garbage collection, etc., etc. So it's a kind of a challenge. We had proposed a size, a cap of 90 square meters and a cap of 50 lakh rupees in urban areas. That would have been more attractive for the private sector to do, but that, of course, has not been done.
Rajesh Krishnan, you've been actually financing, bringing equity to a lot of players who are doing affordable housing. I find it hard to believe that if you actually don't do affordable housing efficiently, you're not going to make any money on it. So 3 years to me doesn't seem like an unachievable task. That's one. And number two, do you really believe the area which Gitambar is outlining is a big constraint as well?
Look, affordable housing, there is enough money to be made. Okay, it's a myth that there's no money there. Affordable housing on an average makes about 20% direct margin. If you compare it in the context of a manufacturing business, it's fantastic business to be in. So I don't see any problem making money in affordable housing. Where making money does become challenging is when you talk social housing, which is EWS housing at 3 lakh kind of price points. There it is true that the margins are low. But if you're talking affordable housing in general, which is the 10 lakh to 50 lakh kind of spectrum, I think there is enough margin there for private sector participants to play. But then I guess the challenge really is most of the guys who are doing affordable housing are local developers who are not best known for corporate governance, financial prudence, and they struggle to attract capital, right, from institutions. Okay. So in essence, the problem for the affordable housing sector is a disconnect between capital and execution capability. To address Gitambar's point, I do agree. It's a bit of an artificial constraint that you can only do 30 square meter homes. While on the one side, I appreciate where the government is coming from. There is a huge need for housing at 30 square meters. And the fact is, even if you put out 1 million units at 30 square meters in a place like Bombay, it will get absorbed. But then there are social repercussions on having vertical slums, which is the point that I guess my friend is making here.
Mr. Kalyan Raman, if I were to come back to you, why, I mean, let's keep the nomenclature of, I mean, this is something that Gitambar, Credai, etc. will continue to lobby, and I think we've got more consensus that do away with that 30 square meter at least constraint. But having said that, we also see this whole situation where there is a credit risk guarantee fund, NHB is financing, there are, you know, housing finance companies who you've just said are actually funding this segment. But then why are there so many empty homes as well in this segment? Why is this disconnect? I mean, are the buyers, is the finance not reaching the right buyers? What's going on?
Let's take it in two parts. One, just to roll back a little. Nothing prevents from the builders to do 30 square feet and 30 square meters and 60 square meters on the same complex. The government has to draw a line somewhere. Today it's 50 lakhs. Somebody tomorrow will say give it up to 1 crore. So we have to draw a line somewhere, which the government drew. Number one. Number two, when you say so many houses are available, I entirely agree with Rajesh. I don't think they are available in the below 10 lakhs or 15 lakhs. If you take the statistics out, it's all available at high end. And my friends in Credai or MCHI don't like it when I say this. But the market forces purely dictate that if there is houses which are not selling, and whatever does not sell, play with the price, reduce the price, make it affordable to the population, right? Then people will offtake it.
Okay.
Okay, so it's a situation that I don't think there are houses which are built up and not available at below 10 lakhs or 12 lakhs range. I'm sure if you say tomorrow 15 lakh houses are available with timely completion, transparency in your own office and then outside, there'll be people queuing up to buy that.
Okay, I think that's also a very, very different discussion. So let me, if I were to come back to you and ask you, what do you see if you're looking at the financing aspects of affordable houses in India? You've already said that the tap hasn't stopped. In fact, the tap is now open from your end, from the government's end. You're saying it's also reaching the right people because the loan book growth shows that. So what is the challenge? I mean, what is something that we need to resolve and solve?
I think the challenge is, as I said, that how do we more and more make financial institutions underwrite this informal income and irregular income? That's number one. While many of the HFCs have mastered it, and some of the new HFCs are presenting that, they have created attributes using credit bureau data, which is a smart thing to do. Then some of the HFCs have this habit of going and standing in front of a small shop in a village or in a urban area, outside the urban areas. For 3 days they map what are products he is selling and then create an imputed income and imputed profit to map his cash flows. And we also have completely relaxed refinancing to the new HFCs from earlier 3 years to give a boost to all this affordable housing. But the demand is so high. And the challenge in the segment is more in people learning to underwrite this. And let's accept it, the historical data shows there is higher delinquency because there is reluctance of underwriting. Second thing, the problem is all the checks which a financial institution has to do in this is same as doing a 20 lakhs or a 25 lakhs loan. So the mindset is I am much better off doing a 25 lakhs loan rather than a small value loan. So some of the HFCs I had informed, when they asked me, I said move your targets to number of units financed. So those things also some of the HFCs which are happening in the segment is doing. I don't know whether banks are doing, which is one way of encouraging more and more people to underwrite.
All right, okay, fair enough. Let me come to you, Rajesh. What would you like to? I mean, you're saying that the first bit, which is the equity part, is the hardest. How do you encourage more equity money to come into affordable housing?
See, again, there are two pieces of the puzzle from a developer perspective, right? One is the seed equity that is required to get a project off the ground. And the second is working capital that is required to bridge the gap between essentially customer collections and project construction. Today, the fact is banks are not lending to affordable housing sector. And that is, if you ask me, an easy problem to solve. If you want housing for all, we need to make affordable housing priority sector. If not, at least put it into a separate bucket. Because today, banks cannot differentiate between real estate and affordable housing. And as a result, banks are not encouraged to lend to affordable housing sector. There was a policy that came out like 3-4 years back, which basically permitted affordable housing's project loans to be qualified as PSL. But then I don't know of a single project in the country that qualifies. Which tells me the policy is not working, right? We just need to revisit it and make it more practical.
Okay.
But then, again, I come back to the same point. The key challenge today is finding that 100-200 rupees per square foot required of equity to tie up the land and get a project started. And there, we need to see at least about $10 billion going into this sector if you're serious about finding millions of homes across the country. And I don't see that money going today. So we need to solve for that. And the question is, who's going to put that money? Today, the fact is private sector, private equity investors are not there in scale. And if you ask me, the government is the best source. They do have a budget. Instead of spending it themselves, I'm saying they should back private sector developers with the seed capital required for projects. A social housing fund, perhaps, to catalyze this movement.
All right, Gitambar, last point to you. I know you missed out saying something, but if you were to look at financing aspect of it, I mean, are you worried that there won't be enough equity backers for your affordable housing projects? Though developers like you have had no problems in bringing in equity because, you know, it's the smaller developers who have issues.
No, Manisha, we have to understand the definition of affordable. You know, what is affordable in one particular area may not be affordable in another area. So there is a lot of affordable housing happening in the NCR, and everybody is, you know, there's Noida extension for you, there's Sona Road near Gurgaon. So these are examples of affordable housing that is happening right now, and we are not availing any tax benefits. What I'm trying to say here is, you know, the supply side, this has to come from the private sector. So no matter what we may debate and discuss on a television show, unless it doesn't make sense to a private developer to go down to that space, he will never go there and supply will not be unleashed. 1, 2. On the offtake, you spoke of a credit risk guarantee fund. You know, that fund is only for houses which cost 5 lakh rupees. So now, where do you get a house for 5 lakh rupees so that a bank gets comfort? You know, so these issues need to be addressed. Now, with this new thing which the government has introduced in the finance bill, it's a huge step, and we are very, very thankful to the government for doing it. It needs a little bit of fine-tuning so that the private sector actually goes and does affordable housing or low-cost housing. Otherwise, we are just debating on this show and, you know, it will be done, it won't be done, this much money is required, so many units required. Who's going to do it?
Okay. I'm going to conclude there and probably come back again. Okay, final word from you, sir.
One is the credit risk guarantee fund. The eligibilities are being revamped. You will hear about it shortly.
Fantastic. All right, that's breaking news.
Yeah, NHB has already equity participated in IMGC, India Mortgage Guarantee Company, which is available to all the financial institutions without any limit on the loan. You have to just talk to them, they are going behind financial institutions saying whatever loans you think or risky, or please underwrite, we would guarantee. Of course, there is a cost to it. So there are two ways. Government is taking care of the low ticket loans. Let's put up to 12 lakhs or 13 lakhs when it comes in, we would see. And then there is IMGC, which would definitely talking to all the financial institutions to guarantee even high ticket loans.
Okay.
So it's there.
It's there and things will get better. That's what we are saying. One step at a time. I know it's a very, very big agenda. Developers like Itambar and every developer office is talking about how to do affordable housing because they've realized that's where the big market is. It's been a low-hanging fruit, but nobody's really figured out how to really, get to that low-hanging fruit. Some players like Brick Eagle have managed to sort out some of those pieces of puzzle. I'm going to thank all the gentlemen here on the panel today. Thanks for your time. We'll keep the discussion on affordable housing going because that's one of the most critical aspects of what's missing from the housing sector in India.